Hi, and welcome to my quick video on the new D: design time data built into Visual Studio 2019 since Update 7. I'm excited about this project because we've been working on it for a long time. This approach to design time data makes it a lot more accessible to developers in a simplified way so that hopefully you can really find value in it for your project. So this is available since Update 7 for Visual Studio, and we are improving it in various releases since then, so certainly being on the latest version of VS would be a great benefit. D: Design Time Data works for .NET Core developers, and those, of course, developers who are targeting .NET 5, as .NET 5 is an extension of .NET Core. It also works for UWP developers, or those developers that are targeting .NET Framework but choose to use our new XAML designer. You can get all the compatibility information up on the website right here that's opened up right now. So take a look at it. We'll show you examples of how it works. We'll show you examples of also even more complex scenarios than just the simple ones. We can talk to you about it. We can teach you extensibility so that if you want to use it with not just in the box controls, but third-party controls, whether those are from third parties that you purchase from or the ones you built in-house yourself, we fully support that as of Update 8. And we have troubleshooting and information about where it's supported, all in this documentation. So definitely check it out. Right now, I'm going to show you a sample app that I've built. So this is on my personal GitHub repo. Here's the URL up here. This sample app just makes it easy for me to show you off design time data really quickly. So let's go ahead and just jump into Visual Studio and take a look at that. So what about design time data in general? Is design time data something that's been available to Visual Studio developers before we did this D: implementation? Yes, actually it has. There's a D: design time data context, which developers could use, but that requires a view model, and therefore a bit more investment before you can take advantage of design time concepts. D: we believe is simpler, so hopefully you will be able to use it kind of quicker, earlier on your project, and without as much formality. So let's take a look how it works. So in my sample app, this app, if you run it, actually is completely useless. It's only for demonstrating design time data. And that's an important concept. Design time data is only in your XAML designer. So if you have your XAML designer disabled, for example, this feature won't be of much use to you. And if you wanted to have some sort of design time data in your running application, that would actually not work either, because again, this is specifically for the XAML designer. So the XAML designer as a previewer is something that a lot of people do today, and therefore we do believe it will be useful for folks in many different situations. So let's take a look at how this actually works. So here I'm going to select the label, and the label has content in it right now, so that's great. You can see the content, but if you don't want this to appear in your production application, how is that going to work? So here I'm going to switch out this to D: content, and I'm going to write test again. So the test reappears inside of the XAML designer, but now because it has this D: ignorable prefix, it will never make it into your production application. So if we were to start this app, this label would be empty as you would expect it to be. Right next to it is an example of a text block. Here I'm demonstrating something slightly different. Let's make believe that this binding path would actually do something. So I have the text property already taken. It has the binding path inside of it, so I can't mock anything using the real property. I have to actually run the application in order to see something. But because I've added the D: property, I now have data inside the designer, which is very, very useful. If I take away this text, as you can see, the control would be blank and empty, and it would be very even hard to see there's a control there because it would literally be an empty spot. So by putting this in here, we're enabling quite a bit of capability. So for example, this next text box also has text block versus text box, also can be put with some design time data. Here I have a password field. Not only do I have some fake characters in here, I even set the character to be something different than when my running app will happen. This allows me to test something new that I would want to see what would this look like as a different character before I would actually make that change for real in the running application. And then all the way out to more complex examples. If you have something like a rich text block and you want to build out a flow document, a paragraph, etc., you can mock all of that with design time data. As you can see right here, this works really well. This works also really well for lists. So here I have three list boxes. I have a list view, a list box, and a tree view. And all three have design time data. The way that I've mocked this particular design time data is I've used an array of strings to put together a list. And I've actually put just enough to trigger this scroll viewer. So I wanted to see what that would look like without having to run the application. So you're able to kind of test things like that out. And as you can see, everything from D colon list view item source down, um, it has it's created under the design time context. Now, what if you wanted to do something kind of more real and more complicated? Strings won't do everything, so I've had to do that in my data grid. Here, I've actually created a set of an array under D colon data grid item source, and I've created a bunch of model entities. And these model entities are all entities that are based on a model that I actually do have in my application. So I did have to create that model, but by taking advantage of it, I was able to create a fake item source that it's only used during design time. And this item source now populates a much more complex scenario where you can have all sorts of things here listed, including like checkboxes. So for example, is member is a checkbox control. If I set this to 0, I could see what that looks like. Now you might have noticed nothing happened. That's because using this particular approach of an X array, you have to refresh the designer. But luckily we have a new refresh button right here. By clicking that button and by going back to list, let's go back to list, you can see that I can preview what the change look like again, all without having to start my application. And this works great with buttons. You can check enable disable state. You can look at combo boxes. You can set the default value. You could do things like images, as long as the image is included in your project. And you can also do things like selecting a particular date in the control, looking what a progress bar looks like. If I set it to a value of 180 of the max 200, and it even works with controls. So if you have a control that you've custom built and it's in your project, in this case, here's my control, and here's my design time data. I have the word designer and not designer. So you can see that I've tried to sort of demonstrate both the designer and not designer could go all the way back out to your place that hosts this control. So that's it for design time data. I hope you found it useful. Definitely give this feature a try and let us know how it works for you. Thanks so much for watching. See you later.